Today we're getting into the deep conversation about guns in America, starting with something Ice-T said that really made waves. In an interview, Ice-T laid it out, saying that gun rights are about more than just hunting or sports. He made it clear that the last form of defense against tyranny is a gun. But he didn't stop there. Ice-T also touched on something bigger. He talked about how you will never have justice on stolen land, and that this reality isn't going to change.
Briefly took the opportunity to ask him about his own attitude towards guns, and I asked him why he's such a defender of the right to bear arms.
Well, I'd give up my gun when everybody else does.
And is that
Doesn't that make sense?
Well,
doesn't that make sense? I mean, if you were to, if there were guns here, would you want to be the only person without one?
So do you carry guns routinely at home? I mean, you have a gun at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny. Not to hunt. It's to protect yourself from the police.
And do you see any link between that and these sorts of incidents?
No. Nah, not really. You know what I'm saying? If somebody wants to kill people, you know, they don't need a gun to do it.
Makes it easier though, doesn't it?
Not really. You can use you can strap explosives on your body. They do that all the time.
So when there's the inevitable backlash of the anti-gun lobby as a result of this incident, as there always is.
Well, that's not going to change anything in the United States.
Anything.
Nah. The United States is based on guns. You know, like KRS says, you'll never have justice on stolen land. So it's not going to change.
That statement carries a lot of weight, especially when you think about the history of America and the communities that are still fighting for real justice and safety today. Ice-T wasn't glorifying violence. What he was saying is that guns have been a part of American history since the beginning, and for many, they've become a way to protect themselves when the system doesn't. Now that brings us to the debate between Jamaal Bowman and Byron Donalds. This conversation was heated, and for a good reason. When you're talking about gun violence in America, especially in Black communities, emotions run high. Jamaal Bowman came in strong, representing the side that gun violence is a public health crisis that needs real solutions. He wasn't just talking stats. He made it personal, calling out how kids in our communities are living in fear of gun violence every day. It's not just about mass shootings or what's in the headlines. It's about the everyday reality of families who are losing loved ones to this violence and how our leaders aren't doing enough to protect them.
The second-year congressman join us, and I should note, you two are friends, despite being on opposite sides of the aisle. Thank you so much for being here for these important discussions. I think people are just craving civility in politics and to hear civil discussions about the most important topics of the day. One of those topics, of course, guns, as we were just talking about. In this culture of fear, do you both agree there is a gun violence crisis in America? Who wants to?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. I mean, the evidence speaks for itself. Guns are the #1 killer of children in our country because of the culture of fear mongering that has been facilitated and nurtured mostly by the Republican Party. You have people getting shot, innocent people getting shot in driveways, ringing the wrong doorbell. You have 14-year-olds in my district, and I'm sure not far or within Byron's district, being killed with illegal guns that are trafficked from Republican-led states for the most part. So there's a gun epidemic absolutely in our country. There has been for many years, and we need to move heaven and earth to stop this. Ban assault rifles. Let's have universal background checks, universal red flag laws, and let's make sure that law enforcement is actually tracking gun crime in their states. I learned recently, out of 17,000 law enforcement agencies, only 7,000 track firearm crimes in their jurisdictions. The other 10,000 do not. We need to know where the guns are coming from, how they're getting in, and stop them from getting in to the places where they're killing Black and poor people.
On the other side, Byron Donalds pushed back. He argued that taking away guns isn't the solution, that guns are part of people's right to protect themselves.
Well, first of all, a couple of things. The tragedies we see on TV are horrific. You know, just looking at the footage of the father talking about what happened to his daughter going into the wrong driveway and his grief, that's something that shakes everybody. Two things. One, we do have a criminal justice system that is supposed to hold people accountable when these tragedies occur. That's number one. So the process does have to work. But number two, this is the balance. This is where this comes into play. Americans do have constitutional rights to hold firearms. That is in the Constitution. It is our governing document. And unless members of Congress go through the process of amending our Constitution, that is the law of the land. So I understand the grief that so many families deal with, but you have more than 100 million gun owners in our country. They own guns legally, they own them lawfully, they respect everybody's humanity, and they use them for sport or whatever, and they don't harm other people. When these tragedies occur, it is horrific. But we also have to understand that in our country, we have a balance to protect all rights. People's right to live, 100%, but people's right also to bear arms. They are equal rights that have to be protected, and Congress is mandated to do that. Last piece I will say. Last Congress, I know there was a bill that came through the House. House Democrats, my colleague Jamaal Bowman voted for that legislation. I voted against it. It didn't go anywhere in the Senate. In Barack Obama's first term, they had control of all three branches. If you remember, they had 60 votes in the Senate. They could have did everything that Jamaal wanted to do. They didn't do that when Barack Obama was president. Why? Because the data does not support the arguments that we're seeing. The tragedy speaks to everybody. I'm not discounting the tragedy. But when you look at the data, long run, for some of the provisions that he's supporting, the assault weapons ban to be one, the New York Times came out and reported in 2014 it had no effect. The Department of Justice reported it had no effects. The Rand Corporation did a study. They said it had no effects on decreasing the atrocities that we unfortunately do see in America.
But here's where Bowman really hit back. He asked the question that so many of us are thinking. If we're serious about protecting people, why are we making it so easy for guns to fall into the wrong hands? Bowman made it clear that it's not just about having the right to own a gun, but also about making sure we're doing everything we can to stop unnecessary deaths, especially in our communities.
So first of all, the Second Amendment also reads well regulated. Right now, the guns in this country are not well regulated. So we have assault rifles getting into the hands of 18-year-olds and getting into the hands of people that should not have guns, and they're killing children as young as 6 years old in our nation. That is unacceptable. We need to deal with the well-regulated part of the Second Amendment as well as the rest of it. That's number one. Number two, law enforcement at best exists on the back end, responding to a crime after it's committed. We need to do a much better job of being proactive and preventative from leaving people to commit crimes in the first place, which means we have to invest in historically disenfranchised communities. We can't talk about guns and gun violence without talking about poverty. We need to spend as much as necessary to invest in historically disenfranchised communities to end poverty in our country, which deals with the trauma, which deals with the mental health, which deals with the substance abuse. I need to see Republican leadership on this and Democratic leadership on this. Third, after the Sandy Hook shooting, we still could not ban assault weapons in our nation. And to Byron's point, yes, Democrats have to be more aggressive in ensuring that we do what we need to do, not just legislatively, but with our voice to respond to the NRA and respond to those who continue to be Second Amendment purists. And then lastly, Republicans are sacrificing our children for the Second Amendment. Our children, our most precious resource, children that will grow up to be creators, innovators, designers, solve climate change, save our democracy from itself. We have Republican members of the House wearing assault rifle pins on the House floor after mass shootings have occurred. So this tells you what their priorities are. Assault weapons, the Second Amendment part of it, not the well-regulated part, over the lives of innocent Americans. That's unacceptable.
And that's where we'll leave it. Guns in America is a topic that sparks a lot of strong feelings. But one thing is clear, we need real solutions that protect our communities, especially Black communities, where gun violence hits the hardest. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay woke. See you in the next one.